Hi, it's Rob Cockerill here for gasworld. We're at the Decarbonisation Summit here in New Jersey. Delighted to say I'm joined by Steve Milward from 8 Rivers. Steve, tell us in the context of the Decarbonisation Summit what 8 Rivers' point of difference is.
Thanks, Rob, and thanks for the opportunity to have this conversation. Really, in the context of what 8 Rivers does, we've had the advantage of really sort of having a 10-year head start, over a decade head start on everybody else. Our business was founded by Miles Palmer and Bill Brown, and in 2008 they both had the vision that something needed to change the potential climate disaster that was looming. And they founded the company, they built the company up, and really the bedrock of what we've done with everything that we've done with the Alan Fetfet cycle and spinning that into net power has really been a catalyst for our own business to help push forward now and be more advanced. It's really, really interesting to see how we've evolved over the last few years as we've accelerated this decarbonisation journey, and really sort of how we're now at the forefront. And as you'll hear tomorrow during my presentation, how we've sort of driven forward with everything that we've done in terms of oxycombustion, CO2 capture, and how we're advancing our own technologies in line with now what is the race to net zero.
So tell me more about tomorrow, and in fact the technology that you are pioneering with. Let's get an insight into what you're going to talk about and what it is that's so exciting that you're working on.
Yes, so 8RH2 is the technology, and it's a technology that was invented by Rodney Allen. So Rodney Allen, who was a former technologist at Air Products, was really, really passionate about oxycombustion. And really sort of developed the Alan Fetfet cycle over the sort of from sort of 2009 through to sort of the end of that decade. And really what Rodney did was Rodney looked at that cycle, which is a supercritical CO2 cycle, which was using that CO2 for work in the turbine, and actually looked at it and thought, hang on, there's heat here. There's a lot of heat in this CO2. So why don't we use that CO2 and that heat to reform natural gas and actually create syngas, which we could then extract the hydrogen. So Rodney's sort of vision of using that CO2 cycle and then having that moment of brilliance to say, hang on, I can actually use this same cycle, and you'll see it tomorrow in the presentation. On the top side of the cycle, it's ultimately the same CO2 cycle as the Alan Fetfet cycle from a CO2 perspective, but on the bottom of the cycle, you're then taking that syngas from the reforming process, and you're actually taking that syngas and developing hydrogen, and then looping that tail gas that comes off that hydrogen production back in to the oxycombustion process. So you're now running the oxycombustion process on tail gas and dialing that natural gas back. So initially starting on a high burn of natural gas, pulling that back very gently to account for tail gas, which is making that process really, really efficient.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's very much a closed loop there, and like you said, you're able to throttle that back, which is fantastic. So what are the kind of applications for this technology? Where can we expect to see it used?
So initially, this technology will be used to generate hydrogen, but you could use this technology in methanol production. You could use it for producing, obviously, other chemicals that you need to go along that decarbonisation journey. I think for us, the first thing is the critical piece of equipment in this is our CO2 convective reformer, which we call the CCR, and that CCR is the key piece of equipment. So you've got the combustion process, but then you've got the CCR, which is the reformer. And for us right now, we've made an announcement about how we partner with Casale. Casale have 100 years in producing ammonia at scale around the world, and we signed a joint development agreement with Casale. They are going to design and develop and manufacture the CCR. They'll also provide the process warranties and guarantees, which is critical for our process when you're looking at bankability and finance. And when you've got a name like Cockerill that are working with you, it's really, really powerful. It's now not just an 8 Rivers story, it's now 8 Rivers partnering with one of the world's best performing technology companies who've got a really, really strong background in ammonia. And that's a fantastic thing to have, to be able to go forward with this technology.
Absolutely, and it's a decarbonisation story as well. So, what's your kind of rollout expectations and timelines? Do you have anything you can reveal there?
Yep. So we made an announcement around Cockerill Clean Energy, which is our first project. That project will produce around 880,000 tonnes of ammonia, capturing about 1.4 million tonnes of CO2. And we'll be based in Port Arthur, Texas. So we've got the land, we're going through permitting for the project, we've been highly engaged with the local community. The one thing that is at the core of everything that 8 Rivers does is it's all about the communities, it's all about involving the local community, whether that be for jobs or just speaking to them about this plant is going to be on their doorstep, and it's about actually telling them that this isn't another big oil refinery, this isn't another big coking plant or something big and smelly and something that they don't want. This is something that's clean, that's going to bring clean jobs, that's going to allow those communities to actually use the people that had those jobs in the dirtier oil refineries, those old processes, and actually upskill those people to actually give them those jobs in where we're going now. I think that Cockerill Clean Energy is our first project. The timeline for that is that we expect to reach COD, commercial operation, around end of 27, 28. We're well along our feed study now. With Flo. So Flo are working with us on our feed study. We're looking to complete that this year. And we're looking to break ground next year. So, it really is we're really, really moving this project forward at quite a pace.
Absolutely. I know you're very much somebody that doesn't believe in using the term hope, but instead actually doing, and it sounds like you're very much doing that.
Yeah, that's right. You know me. Hope is not a valid strategy. And everything that we have, we're always looking at what is the next challenge. What is the next thing we've got to overcome to make sure that this project works? One of our founders always said, he said, when you're driving along the street and somebody says there's going to be a McDonald's there, when you drive past a few months later, there's a McDonald's. Don't make a public announcement unless you know that project is going to be there. And that's one of the things that we're very cognizant of is we haven't just made an announcement about a project or about a technology or about a partnership just for the sake of improving our brand awareness or making a statement to say, hey, we're keeping up with everybody. There is a lot of substance that's gone into the announcements that we make. We're very careful about how we make those announcements, that those announcements have that background and that depth that it is actually going to happen.
Sure, fantastic. And I love the idea that of upskilling existing labour workforce and helping them not just to transition but actually to thrive in a cleaner energy landscape. A final couple of questions then, Steve. Is there anything else you can tell us about that you might have up your sleeve? Any hints you could give us about any other technology developments coming up?
We are, as I just said, we are advancing this project very, very quickly, and that project needs a lot of partners. So if you look at the technology itself, oxycombustion, you need a lot of oxygen. Producing ammonia, we need a lot of nitrogen. So obviously there are air separation units integral to our plant. We are working with a very well-known air separation unit company. We're not ready to make that announcement yet, but we will be in the very near term making an announcement with them around the procurement of an air separation unit for the project. And then on the oxycombustion side, obviously the combustion is key to the process, to producing that CO2 that goes into the CCR. And we've been working very, very closely with a very, very reputable combustion manufacturer. Again, I would say that they've got a long heritage in combustion in general, and we've been working with them for a number of months around what does this combustor look like, what's its performance, how are we going to demonstrate that combustor. So demonstrating it ahead of deployment, because you don't want to build a sort of $2 billion plant to try and start it up on day one with a combustor that you've never tried. So obviously, we're going to take that combustor, we're going to go and do field trials, new test centre trials on that combustor, and actually look at how we not just start up and shut down the combustor, but what about the transients in between, and how do we actually, as I referenced before, how do we get that tail gas right, how do we dial back the natural gas, so we can sort of start to work on some optimisations ahead of when we start to deliver the equipment to clean energy.
Sure, thank you, Stephen. My final question really would be something I've asked a couple of times at this event so far, and I intend to ask you on the stage tomorrow. How do you feel the energy transition is progressing as a whole, and how is it impacting the gases industry?
I think the energy transition is something, just to sort of take a step back, it's something that I've lived through in my career. I mean, sort of talk about energy transitions. The transition has been, it's always been there. It's just now something that's building more momentum. When you sort of looked at coal-fired power plants, and then people were trying to move away from coal, and they started to look at biomass, and then these conferences in general used to be about, well, how do we get more biomass into coal-fired power plants? How do we blend more biomass into coal, or how do we look at other options? And how do we improve coal? I was instrumental in doing a lot of work around particulate emission issue in that previous life. I think now we're reaching a point where a lot of these projects are now moving forward. A lot of the bigger players, we heard from Lindy this morning around some of their projects, which are really exciting. And it's about sort of putting everything into context. You hear about green hydrogen and how fast is green hydrogen going to accelerate. And obviously we've got to get different electrolyzers and how those different electrolyzers can scale up to actually meet demand. I think the blue hydrogen, blue ammonia projects are the ones that are going to go first. That's clear to see. And that's a really interesting landscape, and I think that will support the green, as I don't like to use the word colours, but I think everybody references colours. And then it's what comes after that. Wind and solar will always be there, which is sort of the current bedrock that we've got. And then I think the blue ammonia is going to come into play, and then the green. Obviously on the backdrop of nuclear, which will always be there. But I think it's all coming together, and I think for me, the end of this decade will be really, really interesting to see how that's all played out. And if you took a snapshot today of all of the projects, a lot of them will fall by the wayside, as they do. 45Q and 45V, especially 45V in the NRA, will start to actually, I think, help some projects develop faster, and some projects will start to fall away because they can't meet the requirements of 45V. But I think that's a good thing, because you can then build a stable economy on those projects, and you've got stability in the decarbonisation landscape going forward. Once those first projects in green have gone forward on 45V, everybody will know what are the boxes we've got to tick.
Direction of travel.
Yeah, and then they know the direction of travel, and everybody knows the direction of travel. And much like wind and solar, once wind and solar was established and people knew the direction of travel in whatever region of the world they built, they were built, whatever government incentives were there to help build them. Once green goes, everybody will know. And I think green will accelerate very, very quickly, really quickly.
Sure, thank you, Steve. Well, we've enjoyed hearing all about the direction of travel at 8 Rivers. Thank you very much for your time. We look forward to seeing you on stage tomorrow.
Yeah, thank you, Rob, and thank you to Gasworld.